with your host, legendary trainer and boxing expert, Gil Clancy. Featuring the biggest and brightest stars, plus the up-and-comers of the fight game. Gil Clancy's Boxing Journal.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Gil Clancy's Budweiser Boxing Journal. My guests tonight are Tony Signore, outstanding publicist of the #1 amateur boxing tournament in the country, the New York City Golden Gloves. And I'm proud to say my second guest is my daughter, Kathy. What is she doing on a boxing show after some of the stands that I'm taking? That's what I'd like to find out. Always find a way to disrupt training and take the fighter's mind off the fight. No women in boxing. You know, Kathy, I've said before that women don't belong in boxing. But apparently you went around me, did an end run or something, because you have worked the New York City Golden Gloves. You did the color commentary along with myself and Sam Rosen on 4 shows, and you interviewed all the finalists, all of the winning finalists.
Thanks a lot for helping out, Dad. But despite that, yes, you were my partner. Went okay. We had great fights, and so far, no terrible reviews, and no one else has said women don't belong in boxing.
Well, you know, Kathy, you can't say no terrible reviews. You got very, very good reviews, and I guess I have to eat a little crow because a lot of people have told me how much they enjoyed your broadcast. But you know, maybe I don't just consider you a woman because you're my daughter and you've been around boxing so long. You know, Kathy, as a matter of fact, there you are when you were 2 years old up at training camp with the world champion Emil Griffith. You spent so much time with me in these training camps. I trained all my fighters in the Concord Hotel in those days. You were up in training camp with Joe Frazier, with Emil Griffith, and you have been around boxing. So maybe I have to make an exception when it comes to women don't belong in boxing and make a little exception for you, Kathy. What about that?
How about instead of an exception, Tony, we're going to get an apology from him today.
Well, no, I don't, Kathy, you know, the writers, you've done a very, very good job as far as color is concerned, and you do know your sport. You probably watch as many fights or more than I do. Your fiance is also a fight fan, and you do know the sports. Okay, I'll say I'm a little sorry, all right?
Okay, thanks.
And you know, Tony, you also were very involved in this year's Golden Gloves, and it was just a great Golden Glove tournament. Had some outstanding young men in the tournament, but you know, a lot of people don't realize all the work that it takes to make a Golden Glover.
No question about that. Everyone gets a chance to see the Golden Glove fighters on MSG Network, and they see these young kids from 16 up until 26 years of age, but they don't realize how much work is involved. Many of these kids have been fighting since they're 13, 14 years old, spending a lot of time in the gym. And the most important thing that most of the people should realize that these kids really learn a lot from being in the gym. They learn a lot from their trainers. A lot of them treat them like sons. And the discipline factor is very, very important. The fighters learn a lot about themselves. They learn how to respect their bodies. And there's a very important part of the gloves that should be mentioned, and that's the drug-free tournament.
Tony, as far as the drug-free tournament, that was just the greatest statistic ever. 650 entries in the Golden Gloves, and they had to take a drug test. 649 passed the first time around, and only 1 failed it, and he passed the second time around. There's no other sport or no other industry that could even match that record, and as you say, it's because of the hard work that these trainers do, and most of them are volunteers. They don't get paid for it. They work hour after hour. They drive these kids to amateur tournaments in all different parts of the city. They get home midnight, after midnight. They have to get up in the morning. Almost every one of them has a regular job. So these coaches are really dedicated people. And for any of you young guys out there, you say, well, how do I get in the Golden Gloves? Don't wait until next year, until the applications come out in the Daily News. You should look up a local gym, a local YMCA, local boys club. Find one that has a good boxing program and go over to the gym now. Tell the coach or whoever he is, I'd like to learn how to box. And from there, that's the first step to maybe becoming another Sugar Ray Robinson or another Emil Griffith. I know, Kathy, you were very involved with the Police Boys Club in New York when your brother John was a trainer, along with Herbie Hayes. And you used to talk to me about Herbie Hayes, who was an ex-Golden Glove champion, as if he was a saint.
He used to make me feel guilty that I wasn't a good enough person. He used to work for his church. He'd wake up, go to church, 6 o'clock in the morning, voluntarily count the money, pick up the boys, take them out to breakfast, take them back to the gym, pick up their things, drive them to Brooklyn, Bronx, wherever the kid gloves were, take them home, buy them some sodas. Then he'd take his wife, drive her all the way out to Atlantic City because she wanted to stop up there and go home. And I'd say, how can a person be this good? These are just kids he met a month ago. He's driving them all over, buying them things, and the man's a saint. But they're all like that.
Well, a lot of these coaches, as a matter of fact, you were with me, and you know, Tony, this is something, I had a fighter that was in the finals of the Golden Gloves in 1951. His name was Henry W. Smith. And for some reason or other, every once in a while, I would really think about Henry, as strange as it may sound. I saw Henry for the first time in all those years, since 1951 until 89, at the Felt Forum this year. He came over and gave me a big hug, and you know what he said to me? It made me feel great. He said, you know, I always thought of you as my second father. Kid that, just from being in, you know, he never turned professional. He was a good fighter. He had some problems at home, but it just, the way these kids look at the trainers, and they learn that discipline in the gymnasium. You know, so many parents are worried about their children, have these fancy programs on now, Parrington, do this, do that. The best thing to do is keep these kids active in a good sports program. What about that, Kathy?
That's right. You're mentioning quality time. I know that's what you were getting at with the parenting, and that's what you put in a gym. You have a man that's just giving you attention, discipline, and they're just teaching you. And if they're a good role model, teachers are very important. That's one of the most important people in your life when you go to the gym and you have a trainer and he's a good example.
Tony, you know that we talked about the values that you learn by being involved in a sport and giving your time up and going to a gymnasium, your dedication, your work ethic, all the things that make you a better human being. But we've also had some very, very successful guys financially that have been in the Golden Glove, became great world champions.
No question about it. Probably the greatest fighter pound for pound, Sugar Ray Robinson, was a two-time Golden Gloves champion. He was the featherweight champion in 1939 and the lightweight champion in 1940. And he went on to become the world welterweight champion in 1946, winning decision Tommy Bell. We had Jose Torres, who went on to become the light heavyweight champion of the world. Floyd Patterson eventually became the heavyweight champion of the world. In more recent times, Mark Braylon, who is currently the WBA welterweight champion. Hector Camacho, three-time champion. So there are quite a few terrific fighters and great champions who started in the glove.
You know, you make me feel real bad, Tony. You left out one guy,
well,
Emil Griffith,
five-time champ.
6 times champion of the world. He was welterweight champion, middleweight champion, and junior middleweight champion of the world. But you know, Tony, in those days, when I had Emil Griffith first starting as an amateur, I was working just the way these amateur trainers that we're talking about now were working. I was teaching school, going to the gym at night to train my fighters. And even weekends, I'd referee basketball and football to make a buck to support my family. So I was busy like 7 days a week. And the fact that, for example, in Emil Griffith, when he was fighting in those Golden Glove tournaments, for him to win that fight, believe it or not, I would get just as uptight and nervous as later on when Griffith would be defending his middleweight or welterweight championship of the world. These trainers, you get so involved with these kids, you watch them in the corner. And it's a wonder that some of them, including myself, didn't have heart attacks. But I know when Griffith was in the gloves, there was a guy in the same weight class as him by the name of Vinny Shomo that still has the record for the most knockouts in the tournament. And, you know, it's a draw. So when I got to the semifinals, I was really scared to death that Griffith was going to fight Vinny Shomo, who had knocked everybody out. But the luck of the draw, he didn't draw Vinny Shomo. And Vinny Shomo fought a guy by the name of Ozzie Marcano from Puerto Rico, who beat Shomo. And then Griffith knocked out Marcano in the finals and made him become the welterweight champion of the Golden Gloves. He went on to win the national gloves, and then he turned pro. And then you know the rest of that success story. And you were involved in that because you were growing up at the time. We saw your picture when you were 2 years old with Griffith. You used to hold his towel, skip rope with him. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. You're mentioning how you just got as excited and nervous in the corner as those guys were. I know that you've been fined for coaching from the corner. And at the same time, I have had points taken away from our nephew who was boxing. You can't help being excited and you can't help coaching from the corner. That's a rule in this.
You know, you're talking about, they don't know about your nephew. Well, my grandson won the kid gloves in New York, and my daughter Kathy worked in the corner, And again, she got a little excited, and I guess like her father, and they took a point away from my grandson in the fight. And the fight she's talking about, when Griffith fought Benvenuti in Shea Stadium, I got fined $500, which I was glad to pay because Griffith won the fight for coaching from the corner. But the guys do get excited because that's because they're so dedicated. You know, I talk about these champions like Ray Robinson, the late Ray Robinson. He just passed away. I mean, he was such a class individual. Muhammad Ali was, you know, a great amateur fighter. They have to start somewhere, these kids, and we've had great amateurs in New York. Now, Mark Breland is a welterweight champion of the world. Hector Camacho is back on the scene again. These are the kind of guys that, and they're role models for the kids in their neighborhoods, which is very, very important.
No question about it. That's where it all begins. It all begins with the Golden Gloves. And one thing we didn't mention, the New York Golden Gloves is the largest and the oldest amateur boxing tournament in the world. Happens to be right here in New York. All the kids out there should take advantage of it.
We had a guy came all the way over from Norway just to enter the New York Golden Gloves. And by golly, he won the New York Golden Gloves.
That's right. I spoke with him at the time. I knew he heard of it, and I also know that Europeans talk about the New York Golden Gloves. Somehow I speak to people in Ireland all the time, and I have a little boy, 12 years old. He writes to me. He knows of the New York Golden Gloves. It's got the best reputation out of all amateur bouts. That's the one everyone thinks you have to win that to become a champion. So that's great.
Well, I guarantee you, when this Norwegian goes back, Arve Breidel was his name, that he will get a hero's welcome back in Norway. It'll be the same in that country as if he won a world championship. And he's on his way. He told you in the interview, I believe, that he was going to go into European championships and then aim for the Olympics. So why don't we take a look at that interview of Arve Breidel.
I want to know, Arve, how did you hear of the New York Golden Gloves?
Well, as a matter of fact, last year there was a team from New York City who went to Norway. And I met one of the guys from New York, light heavyweight. And I did good. I won the fight. So I got to talk with the trainer, you know, Al Gavin. And we sat down talking, and I asked him, you know, if he had pro fighters. And I said, you know, I'd like to come over and give it a try. So he said I could come over and I could fight in the gloves.
That's great. You stuck with your plans. Now, what is next on the list?
Well, as a matter of fact, I go back tomorrow, and I'm going to fight the Norwegian champion back in Norway. And if I win that fight, I'm going to go to the European Championship.
You know, we've talked about the Robinsons, the Griffiths, the Camachos, but what about the prospects in this year's Golden Gloves? You know, Kathy, I thought that the bigger guys showed me a lot in this year's Golden Gloves. There was one kid by the name of George Walsh that reminded me so much of Jerry Quarry.
That's right. He was in the heavyweight novice, which means he was a new fighter. He was really exciting. But usually that's the class where the guys really look like bums. They look like they walked off the streets and into the ring. This year, he was just so exciting. I mean, see some of this action now. No defense, plenty of offense.
Well, you know, he's only a 20-year-old kid. And, you know, I've always said that the Irish mature late. And if you watch this guy, he takes a punch, down he goes. But you'll just watch this guy for a minute. And he's hurt a little bit in the fight. But he just reminds me so much of Jerry Quarry. Even facially looks like Quarry. And he's got that snapping left hook. And he's fighting a southpaw, which is not the easiest thing in the world. And, you know, we had seen the southpaw knock out a guy in an earlier fight and look very, very impressive, Kathy. Strong guy.
That's right. Now, he didn't fight a southpaw in the final, but he had the same style, and his style is to get up off the canvas 1 or 2 times to knock down his opponent. So that's one of the typical exciting bouts in the Golden Glove.
Well, and you know, the thing that he has, you know, for a young kid, you always look for a guy that can throw that good left hook. It's almost like a sprinter. You can only teach a guy to run so fast. You can take the best track coach. You can't improve the guy more than 1/10 of a second. Left hookers normally are natural punches, and this guy shows you a very good left hook. There's a right hand. Because I said left hook, he threw a right hand. But now he's been on the deck twice. And, you know, we know what happens in the fight, and he went on to win the Golden Glove Championship.
He's someone to look forward to next year in the Golden Gloves. He'll probably be in the open class, spend the next year in the gym, hopefully, and then we get to see him again.
Well, that's the way these kids develop. They start out, and now some of them, again, start out in the kid gloves 13 or 14 years old, Tony. And there were some other really great prospects in the gloves this year, I thought.
Yes, there was. There was one young boxer by the name of Robert Landetta, who was only 16 years old, from the West Side Athletic Club, and he started in the Kid Gloves tournament, and he was a novice this year in the Golden Gloves. His first year he was eligible. What a superb fighter for a 16-year-old kid. Terrific left hook, great right hand, terrific counterpuncher. He boxed well, very disciplined, and very confident.
You know, and the public really doesn't know how quickly time goes by. 1 minute you're looking at a guy and he's in the novice Golden Gloves. 3 years later, you're waiting online to see him fight a main event in Madison Square Garden. I mean, it's happened so many times. Look, Mike Tyson didn't make the Olympic team, and it hasn't been that many years ago, and he was fighting main bouts maybe 2 years after he missed out making the Olympic team.
That's right. Mike Tyson didn't have a terrific amateur style, very aggressive, bullish type. He was very suited for the pros, and as we know, very successful.
Well, you know, that's what I like about this kid Walsh. I mean, he's one of these kids that's a natural left hooker. He can punch, but he's right now leaves himself wide open. But you watch him again in the Opens next year, you'll see, if he stays in the gymnasium, you'll see a much more refined fighter. They come along in a hurry.
That's right. They're coming along in just about every weight class. I think you would probably agree that this was the best year for Golden Glovers we've ever had. I mean, the novice, who are people who've had less than 10 fights after their 16th birthday, they look like open class from a couple of years ago. So I think we're going to see a lot of those guys climbing up into the pro ring within the next 5 years.
Now, I'd like to ask you a question, Kathy. We talk about women in boxing. Where are you going? I mean, what's your goal?
Well, I'm starting off like a boxer. I started off in the amateurs. I've done over 50 bouts. I interviewed 24 guys, so we'll see. Maybe I'll work my way up to the pros. Working for the Garden right now in the production office, so we'll see.
Well, you know, Kathy, no, you didn't start out in the amateur. You started out in the pros. You started out skipping rope with Joe Frazier.
That's right.
When you were 4 years old, carrying the towel for Emil Griffith. You worked in the corners when your nephew boxed in the kid gloves. Then you sneaked and you made that tape without me knowing about it, to apply for the Garden job, the job that I now have.
The job that you got while I was in
Europe. Well, I mean, you know, that was just one of those things. But and now I've had the pleasure of working with you, and it was quite a thrill to do a Golden Glove show with you, or a couple of them. And what's going to happen? Are you going to continue working in the amateurs? Are you going to look to do color work in pro boxing? By the way, my daughter is the first woman, as far as I know, that has ever done color work as a boxing commentator ever. Maybe there may have been one or two celebrities that may have sat down for a minute or two, but my daughter is the first one that really is going at this full force.
That's right. It's up to the people I work with. I should really thank our boxing producer, who's a great guy. You know, he knows his boxing, John Gallagher. He's really worked as my agent. He suggested I do the resume tape, brought it to Pete Silverman, the executive producer. Pete okayed it, sent it up. So I have to thank all those people, the executives, especially John Gallagher. Really, he's been my agent. I know I owe him something.
Well, you have the toughness. I think that you're going to do the job. Tony, thanks very much for coming on to tell us about this great tournament.
My pleasure.
And my daughter, Kathy, a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks.
And we'll be back again next week.
Man against man, the ultimate sport. Get ready to rumble. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gil Clancy's Boxing Journal. With your host, legendary trainer and boxing expert, Gil Clancy. Featuring the biggest and brightest stars, plus the up-and-comers of the fight game. Gil Clancy's Boxing Journal.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Gil Clancy's Boxing Journal. My guest tonight is Chairman of the New York State Athletic Commission, Randy Gordon. Randy, you've been on the job almost a year, and really miraculous things have happened in New York State. You've got boxing back in business in New York State, and now I understand we're going to have a Hall of Fame. Would you tell the people about the Hall of Fame, Randy?
Well, a few weeks ago in Canastota, New York, and everybody's wondering, Canastota, it's a small little onion town right outside Syracuse.
Carmen Basilio country.
That's exactly what it is. That's why it's on the map, because of onions and Carmen Basilio. And let's not forget his nephew, Billy Backus, both of whom were world champions. Both live in Canastota. It's about 20 miles outside of Syracuse. There has been a Hall of Fame, a boxing Hall of Fame, which has just opened a few weeks ago. I went up there to cut the ribbon a few weeks ago. And such champions as Joe Frazier and Aaron Pryor and Basilio and Backus and Larry Holmes was there and Jake LaMotta. And what a turnout they had. And Gil, this is indeed a tribute to boxing because it is a Hall of Fame.
You know, Randy, they tried it in Las Vegas, and apparently it just dissolved. But they do have a Hall of Fame in Los Angeles. Now, I know in boxing we have the WBC, WBA, IBF, WBO. Now we're going to have 2 boxing Hall of Fames.
Right. You know, I guess only in boxing could something like this happen because in baseball, you got Cooperstown, you've got a Hall of Fame. In Canton, Ohio, you've got a football Hall of Fame. There's 1 Hall of Fame, but only in boxing, we've got 2 Hall of Fames now. The one in Los Angeles is just a super place with a lot of memorabilia. A lot of fans pass through there every year. But until you've seen this Hall of Fame in Canastota, and there'll be a lot more to be said about it, it is truly a shrine to boxing, a real tribute.
Well, you want to, if I'm a fan, just a fight fan, I want to go up there. What will I see, Randy?
Well, they've got tape machines where you can watch tapes of many, many of the great champions. I know your own Emil Griffith can be seen on tape over there. They've got the robes of Joe Frazier and many, many great fighters. They've got programs. They've got old Fight Magazine, Ring Magazine, when they first came out. They've got displays on different boxing equipment from maybe back at the turn of the century, how it's progressed, how it's gotten better. They have a display on some safety devices like mouthpieces, how good a mouthpiece really is. And they've got displays, pictures of a lot of the great champions. They've got a roll call of every one of boxing's champions. They've got tickets up on the wall that are absolute collector's items. And more collectors are going to be donating their material to the Hall of Fame as the years go on.
Well, Randy, you mentioned these tickets. You know, I know the baseball cards are very valuable now with the trading. I know you're a collector,
yeah,
and I know you have a lot of great tickets that are worth a lot of money. Tell us a little bit about that, Randy.
Well, over the years, I've been buying up some collections that I see, and a lot of the collectors don't charge you all that much money. I walked through a flea market a few years ago. I was looking for a sweatsuit, and I saw a shoebox filled with fight tickets. And I stopped and I said to the guy, "What are these things?" And he said, "I cleaned out my grandfather's house. The guy died recently, and I'm willing to sell them to you for $20.
Randy, let's take a look at some of those tickets that you have collected.
Now, you realize I paid $20 for this collection. These are some of the shots, some Joe Louis tickets. The first 3 are originals. They were never ripped, and those are embossed. Where you see Louis Schmeling, those are embossed, raised letters. And Jimmy Jacobs once offered me for these tickets alone about $250 to $500 per ticket. And I have the original, from the very first heavyweight championship fight, John L. Sullivan and James Corbett, autographed by Sullivan. The late, great Jimmy Jacobs offered me $5,000 cash the very next day. And I said, "Jimmy, this is like a baseball card. If this is a baseball card, it would be like the Honus Wagner card. Nobody has it. I've got it, and I'm not going to sell it. If you ever want it for anything, you got it. Use it. But just give it back to me. I want it for my personal collection. I love it."
And they're going to get more valuable as time goes by. Now, what about the tickets on the wall in Canastota? I guess they're worth a lot of money.
Some of them, I saw some of the same ticket from the same Louis Schmeling fight. But I have a couple. I have one from the Jack Johnson-Jess Willard fight, which was the fight right after World War II, when Jack Johnson was the heavyweight champion of the world and the very controversial champion. This man was running around, and what he did, he violated what was then called the Mann Act. He was running around with white women, and they tried to put him in jail, so he left the country.
Well, the Mann Act wasn't because they were white women, Randy, because it was he went into state to state.
Cross-country state lines with them. And what happened then, that ticket that you saw was one of the very few tickets. Right now, Jimmy Jacobs says it might be the only ticket around. Offered me $5,000 for it. Jack Johnson, the heavyweight champion, went down to Cuba, to Havana, Cuba, and they wouldn't let him come back into this country unless they say he took a dive, lost his title to Jess Willard, then who was the great White Hope. There are some historians who say that Willard indeed knocked him out. Other historians say Jack Johnson wanted to get back to this country and gave his title up.
Commissioner, I guess a fight fan could go up to Canastota and really spend quite a few enjoyable hours in the museum. Just looking at the fight films alone, it would take quite some time. Now, they have, I understand, they have a nice building up there. A couple of questions I'd like to ask you. How is this Hall of Fame funded?
Well, the Hall of Fame is an old house that they converted. And it was just given to the people who are running it. Mr. Ed Brophy right now is the curator of the museum. And a lot of the local businessmen are funding it. But now they're going to start charging admission. It's like $2 for children to get in. And I think it's $4 for adults to get in. And they sell memorabilia. They sell cups and mugs and T-shirts and whatnot and pens that say Boxing Hall of Fame. So they're hoping with the funds that they raise from that, they'll be able to keep up the, just whatever the house needs and the taxes and so forth.
All right, now, what about how do you get into this Hall of Fame? Who makes the decisions? Who votes the guys into the Hall of Fame?
That's going to be a real problem because a lot of fans don't realize that in order to get into the Hall of Fame, historically, when Ring Magazine was in business, and just recently they took the 10 count, whether they'll ever come back again is to be seen. Every year the editors, and I had been an editor at one point along with Bert Sugar, we would vote. A man would have to be out of boxing for about 5 years, and we would vote to see whether he would be eligible for induction or not. And we'd also take one person from the old-timers group, circa 1900, and we'd also take a manager or trainer from any era. Now, there happens to be one guy making a name for himself in one area is hard enough, but to make a name in 2 areas, you happen to be in the Hall of Fame in Los Angeles, which will be accepted by the Canastota Hall of Fame. You made it as a manager/trainer, and you've gone on to another life, very successful as an announcer.
Well, thank you, Randy. And I guess it is another life. We don't have all of that pressure when you're training and managing fighters, waiting for those famous decisions that come up from the judges, which is another point we'll talk about a little later. But who are some of the famous fighters that are already, I mean, did you start out with a base in this Canastota Hall of Fame, that these are the guys that's already in?
Yeah, they took a lot of the guys who were already in the Hall of Fame as inducted by Ring Magazine, which had been accepted by the boxing community as having the Hall of Fame. But see, the Hall of Fame with Ring Magazine over the years was only a name. We had at Ring Magazine a lot of the gloves and paraphernalia of fighters, but there was never a building to put it in. So what we would do is just in name vote a person or persons into the Hall of Fame and then wait for that building to be erected. But now there is none. But, well, there is now in Syracuse. But they took guys like Henry Armstrong and Sugar Ray Robinson and Muhammad Ali and, you know, any great name you could think of as a fighter, and he's in the Hall of Fame.
Well, you know, not only did Ring Magazine vote guys into the Hall of Fame and create their own Hall of Fame, but before we had all of these different alphabet soups, the Ring Magazine boxing ratings, that was the one that decided who was going to fight for the championship of the world and who was just going to be a bystander. Nowadays, we have 4 different groups, 4 different ratings, and some of them are very, very strange. You can draw your own conclusions on that. I think it was much better when they just had the one group of fighters rated. And I have to say that right now, I think Boxing Illustrated, with its board that they have to rate the fighters, is by far the best rating group that there is.
Well, that was started by Bert Sugar in 1979 when he bought Ring Magazine, then hired me to be his editor. First thing he did, he said, I want to do democratic ratings. I looked at Bert, said, this will never work, Bert. You and I should do the ratings. He said, no, because Ring just had a problem with the ratings. I think what we should do is send it out to about 50 to 100 writers around the world. Let them do balloting every month. You'll tabulate the ballots along with me, and we'll come up with democratic ratings. And you know what, Gil? It turned out that it was the best. Bert left Ring Magazine in '83. I left in '84, and then they went back to the old ratings again. Didn't work. Bert Sugar then, about 2 years ago, took over Boxing Illustrated, went back to the democratic ratings, and I think they're the best ratings that boxing can have. There's no games played whatsoever.
Well, what about an idea, for example, I know you're very active with all the commissioners, which we're going to get into a little later. What about trying to pressure these guys into accepting the Boxing Illustrated ratings? Because it is a democratic rating system.
Well, the thing is, if you ask the WBC or WBA or IBF or any one of those organizations to accept something like the Ring magazine or Boxing Illustrated ratings. They're not going to do it because there's some money involved in it.
You made that charge, Commissioner, not me. Were you suggesting that a rating can be bought by a promoter?
Money, scratch, green, lettuce, it doesn't matter what you call it. Gil, having been a journalist since 1974, a writer and announcer, I don't think today is the day to go into it, but anytime you want, you assemble a panel, maybe from one member from the WBA, one from the WBC, and from the IBF, and you get a number of writers, or this former writer, you get Bert Sugar on the show and Michael Katz and so forth, and we have absolutely positive proof that there are men who have been rated #1, have been put into that mandatory position, not because of their ability or who they beat, but because of who their managers paid off. There's no question about it.
Well, I really would like to go into that further. Maybe we will have another show. But let's just take one example. Marlon Starling is the welterweight champion of the world. He had a big money fight with Breland. He felt that his shoulder was hurt, so therefore he postponed that fight. Now he's put in a position where he has to fight a Korean fighter who is ranked #1 by his organization. There's no money that you can't make anywhere near the same kind of money that he would make for fighting a Breland or a Simon Brown or somebody like that. But he has to go through with this fight because it's a mandatory defense. And who is this Korean? It's the same Korean who gave such a very poor performance against Lloyd Hunnigan and got knocked out. Now, if a guy gets knocked out like that, how can he be rated #1? I don't understand it at all.
I mean, I think you're answering your own question. A man that I am very, very fond of. I consider him a very, very good friend, a former Long Islander, former #1 heavyweight contender, Jerry Cooney. Jerry got to #1 by beating nobody. Jerry beat nobody. But he got to #1 because of politics. And I think the world of Jerry. A former bantamweight champion, Carlos Zarate, one of the greats, I think, of all time, was in a title fight ballpark about 1978 against a South African. I think the guy came from South Africa. He may not have had a professional fight going in, but yet he was built up to a #1 contender, and Zarate saw in the first round that this guy was so horrible that he said, oh, no, to himself, this guy is only trying to trick me to come in and leaving myself open. And then in the second or third round, knocked him out.
Did he say that in Spanish or English, Randy, when he was talking? How did you know what he was saying to himself? That's what I'd like to know.
Read it in newspapers and so forth, and a lot of the writers I spoke to who were at that time when I was working for Ring magazine.
Well, we've seen that happen so many times with the ratings. That's why I'm saying it's just too bad that all of you commissioners can't get together. As you say, it's politics. The guys south of the border don't want to give up their power. And it is power to have to rate a fighter. It's a shame the way some of these young kids work, and they work so hard, and they fight good guys, and they can't get rated. And some other turkey will be in there, fight nobody, ranked #1. He's assured of a title shot, and I just don't think it's right. And getting back to this Korean fighter, it was a controversial decision with the Hunnigan fight. He got hit low, but it really didn't make any difference. He did the greatest acting job I've seen since John Barrymore. Do you remember that great performance?
That's right.
And he should get a job as an actor, not as a fighter. But again, it's taking so much money away from Starling and time. I mean, I can only speak for CBS, but CBS would not buy Starling with this fighter, and I doubt if the other networks would. So he has to put the fight up in Hartford and hope that he gets a halfway decent gate. He won't get any kind of a payday at all. But in the meanwhile, it takes his time up. Fighters only have so many years to earn their money. It's just so unfair for these people to have the power that they have. And you, commissioners, should start thinking of a way to do something about it.
Well, the television networks are the ones, having been there on that side, Gil, with the TV networks, with the magazines and newspapers, we're the ones, or they're the ones actually now, who give the credibility to those organizations, to the alphabet soup organizations. And once they stop sanctioning these title fights, some of these jokes, I think the WBC and the WBA and the IBF can just dry up and go away. And maybe we can have one organization that really is working in the best interests of boxing.
Commissioner Gordon, I have privy to know that you're one of the hardest working commissioners that there is in the country. You have a great interest in boxing, and I think you're taking the first steps to get all of these different boxing commissions together. We talk about the WBC, who's Mexico-based, the WBA, who's Venezuelan-based, the IBF, who's New Jersey-based, the WBO, who's Puerto Rican-based, and yet most of the money, 90% of the money, is right here in the United States. We have 43 active boxing commissions in the United States. I've tried, when I was the matchmaker in Madison Square Garden, to try to get these commissions to even talk to each other, adopt uniform rules. I haven't been able to do a thing. Now, I think you've made a lot of progress. You've spoken to me about it. I'd like you to tell the general public about it.
Well, it was about 3, maybe 4 years ago, New York's Governor Mario Cuomo, sitting down with Jose Torres, who was then the chairman of the New York State Athletic Commission, decided to come up with something called the ABC, the Association of Boxing Commissions, where all the commissions that exist would work together. And it was Governor Cuomo's brainchild, if you will. Jose Torres was supposed to take the ball and run with it, but actually he was just running around with Mike Tyson writing his outstanding book, which is out now. And it was kind of left to me when I came aboard about a year ago. So what I did, I picked up the telephone and I started calling men I had become friendly with, men who ran the commissions, like Dwayne Ford and Chuck Minker of Nevada, Larry Hazard of New Jersey, Don Hazelton of Florida, and all these guys who had been friends of mine because I knew them when I was in television. I started approaching them saying, hey guys, we got to work together. If I suspend a fighter or a manager or a trainer, you got to do the same thing. If you suspend, I'll suspend. We'll reciprocate. If you need some medical information on a fighter, record information, I'll send it to you. You send it to me. We have fax machines, and for the very first time, all the commissions are starting to come together. March 1st, we had a big meeting.
Commissioner, the one word that I don't like, you said starting to come together.
Well,
how long is it going to take for these 43 different commissions to agree on uniform rules and exchange of information?
Well, I said starting. You got to realize boxing's been around for a few years, and now they're finally doing it. And it's not going to take a decade to do it, Gil. I think within the next year, they appointed Dwayne Ford. We voted him from Nevada. He's the president of the ABC. They told me, I guess they know that this is a workaholic here. They said, Randy, you're going to take and consolidate all the rules. I'm the head of the Standardization of Rules Committee. I've sent letters to every single commission, and what they're going to do, it's a questionnaire. What is your scoring system? Do you have a 3 knockdown rule? Do you have a mandatory 8 count? Do you have a standing 8 count? And when all those results come in, we're going to put it together, and the majority will rule. If the majority have a standing 8 count, all the states will have a standing 8 count. If they all have a 10-point scoring system, all the states are going to go to a scoring system that says 10 points. And what this is going to do, it's going to consolidate all the rules in boxing for the very first time. And right now, they're talking about having a federal commission. I don't think there's a need for it. The reason that this bill has even come across Congress is because boxing has been run in a helter-skelter fashion over the years. The commissions have done virtually nothing as far as medicals and the health and safety and welfare of the fighter. But now something is being done. You watch, 1 year from now, I believe all the states will totally be together. And this is just 1 year of real hard work.
Commissioner Gordon, thank you very much, and all your efforts on behalf of boxing. Thank you very much for that. Pleasure having you.